I rarely get out from behind my computer screen. No one ever invites me to a meeting in South Africa. so thank you for opening up this space. Sharing some honest and thought-provoking ideas. I love the both and. I mean, I can say from the Powered by the People Consortium, it was not strategic. These partners who were all part of the consortium. It was what you would call like a happy accident, right? Mm-hmm. Because no one in their right mind would have tried to bring together this circus. But because you have really kind of new groups and orgs who've never ever received any kind of institutional funding, plus those who've been funded by U.S. aid from their inception, it's actually a kind of wonderful, magical ecosystem where you have groups who have an opportunity to work together in a unique way that wouldn't otherwise exist, and really kind of start to test and try some of those ecosystem ways of working that allow us to be more effective and more collaborative. So I thought, there's so many good things. Just appreciation for being part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
My experience has shown that there is always a struggle within a struggle. And when normally we use the see, judge, act kind of approach. So you will find that you will have received funding that enabled you to see. But now when you want, maybe you even judged, but when you want to act, the resources that you need sometimes are bigger than the ones that maybe you have used before. So that's the kind of concept that I was thinking of in terms of the graduation, to say, what have you done? Where do you want to upscale it to? What do you need now? And then that then becomes incremental in terms of that kind of graduation. Then there is also, I wanted to reflect on, last year we had a learning hub in Zim. And in the learning hub we had a discussion, in fact it was not a discussion, we were crying about shrinking operation space. That's our language that we have been using as civic society in general to even write proposals to donors. To say we should be funded because there is shrinking operation space in Zimbabwe. Until Zanele then disrupted the thinking, not the Alan way, of course, but slightly closer there, to say, is the space really shrinking? Or maybe the space is shifting? After that learning up, I then sat down with the team and we reenacted the exercise that we did with Zanele. And we came up with a conclusion that there is no shrinking space in Zimbabwe. There is shifting space. Right? Maybe what is shrinking is because it has served its time. Because sometimes something works. If this shed starts being small, I should not be complaining the shed. I should check my body size. maybe I need a bigger shed. Or maybe this shed I have ironed it or been sewing it to the point that it's becoming smaller in some edges. I should look at all those things instead of blaming the space continuously. So when we started looking at ourselves more than looking at the space, we then asked ourselves, what can we do better? We changed our model. And we are working now, like we are working as if everything is normal, but if you look around, everyone is crying that everything is not normal, because we have to change our thinking. We have to change our way that we'll have a workshop in a rural area, we assemble 20 people, we'll go there with our banner, they have to see us, we take our pictures and our donor have to see that. We have to change that, and we have to renegotiate with some of our funding partners to say, we're now going to do it this way. So you will no longer be seeing things as normal, but these are the results. So focusing on the results helped us a lot. So then that means there is also need to define what a movement is. Because I think we have had a template of what a movement is. If I can't pull 1,000 people on the streets or 500 people, I don't have a movement. But is really a movement always about the numbers of people that I'm putting on the street? Or it should also be about the issues that even the few people are able to influence? Maybe just in closing on a lighter note, when you spoke about the cat, we had an experience of trotters. We have, I think most of you may know cow trotters. Huh? We call it the mamandina. It's a traditional meal where we come from. And it's the cheapest of all the meals. Actually, eating cow trotters it's not anything esteemed. And then so when we were doing a meeting, we then decided to buy trotters for the village leaders, just for a discussion. And when we're now reporting, someone who is looking at our documents then responds because of lack of context and say this is a disallowed cost because you spent on luxury. And now the finance person brings it to me. I'm saying, what's the luxury that you spent on? And then he said, trotters. I'm saying, so my email was, do you really think trotters are luxury? Because at some point I was getting angry that I eat trotters and you're saying they're luxury. Luxury is rice where I come from, not trotters. Thank you.
I don't know. Bumping into Kumbulani has been a bit of a game changer in my life. I keep telling you that. Oh, goodness. There's so much richness of sharing. Thank you all very much for sharing. It's an interesting conversation. And you notice how late the invitation for this conversation went out. And that's largely because we were trying to find out how to actually pitch this conversation. There's a part of me that wanted to come here and do a whole big marketing and PR thing. And get all the guys with the big deep pockets like Amy in. And then I had coffee with Amy and I thought, gee, there's a lot more than just marketing. There's actually an interesting conversation. So the question about are we brave enough to do what must be done, it's a deliberate provocation because honestly, all of you have raised at some point a question that kind of starts going towards the critique of the system within which we operate, but stops short of saying the system is actually complicit in maintaining the problematic relationships of power. And what needs to be done is that we've actually got to, I'm told that Alan's very influential in making us swear a lot more. So I'm not going to use the words that he says. But are we calling it out? And are we calling it out not just because we want to sound clever and provocative, but are we calling it out by saying there actually are other ways of doing it? And I think that's why we felt we wanted to just come and share a reflection that we had on actually ways of doing groundmaking. I think that's doing a lot of the stuff that it's been brave in many ways. And I'm loving some of the stuff coming out. The harmonization, boy am I in for that. The sharing information, the moving from just an action orientation to maybe longer term institutional support. I'm up for all of that. And if we can do more of that, that would be great. A couple of other things I wanted to talk about. My former boss, I used to work with Boichoko at Sangoko, but he asks what's the fundamental issue. And I think that we often make an assumption, as do many movements within the funding environment, that it's a moment that we're looking to resolve. There's no moment to resolve. I don't know how many years has Shift the Power been ongoing. How long have the conversations on decolonization been happening? But we're still angsting about it and wringing our hands. How do we do this? That's the courage that I'm talking about. Is we've got to be brave to just do it. You know, just do it. Actu Bumbano was born out of a bunch of Protestant, together with their local partners, a bunch of Protestant European agencies, saying we need to redefine, we need a different model of working together. And the local partners said, why is money at the core of this relationship? Right? You stood with us in our anti-apartheid struggle even when there was no money. You know, you got beaten by the cops as well, next to us. So why do we use money to define relationships of solidarity? And so they were able to embark on a journey that I've been privileged to help guide, that has led to a situation where all these positive things we spoke about harmonized support, about reducing levels of admin and bureaucracy, of being in solidarity in really meaningful ways. And what's happening? The rubbish that's happening in Europe now, the shift to the right, is impacting those very commitments made by those partners. And there's a withdrawal into our lagers. Because we've got the power and the ability to make those decisions by ourselves. All of a sudden, that journey we were making together with our African partners is no longer informing our politics. That's the courage. It's going against the demands of a development aid system that reinforces power dynamics. Even if you don't see it happening, it's happening. So when we do our grant making, I think we've got to see it as part of a shifting, a struggle that constantly moves the needle. And my last point is preaching to the choir. Boy, oh boy, are we good at that. Have you seen the philanthropy circles, guys? Go to the conferences. There's a lot of conferences. And I used to play that circuit. It's wonderful. You speak to your brother, you develop really meaningful friendships because you see each other very often. We've got to stop doing that. I see a lot of the same faces, but I also see a few new ones. But that's not the point. We invest in videos because it's incumbent on us to share conversations like this. If we're doing nothing, if we don't have the authority to change the practice of our own institutions,
sure,
you're obligated by the privilege you have of going to events wherever. We all attend conferences. It's a privilege to be able to do that. And we are obligated, because of that privilege, to firstly interrogate our own practice, honestly and critically, and see whether we are actually part of the system or part of pushing the needle and disrupting. And secondly, we have a duty to challenge. And hey, it's hard when you're dependent on the funding and you know that this donor is behaving like a real chop. And to say, guy, you've got to shift the way you're thinking about things. That's the challenge, to be brave. And I think if we do it together, I like that notion of collaborating. We can do it together. It's a good move. So thank you very much for coming.